everybody, welcome back to American History with Mr. Finn. We have been talking about the colonies in America, the English colonies in America. So, England had all of the colonies. There was 13, if you remember. The people living here was a very rural society. It was part of the last video, meaning it was farming communities, small towns and villages mostly. The people here lived an agrarian, is what it's called, way of life, which again, farming and rural. And then the men were dominating the society. Women were in control of the house and the household economy we talked about, where they made everything. Slavery was still existing here in the United States, or in America. But across the world, slavery had started to come into question. Part of that has to do with something called the Enlightenment, which was when people really started to sit back and think about society and governments and what's right, what's wrong, those types of questions. And that's not something we really get into a lot, but the Enlightenment is going to have, a role to play when we start with what we're talking about today in the creation of the United States of America, no longer the English colonies that existed along the east coast of the modern day United States. So again, we're dealing with colonial times, the colonies. You looked up Colonial Williamsburg and you saw some great pictures of what it would have looked like during that time, the dress that people would wear. And during this Colonial America phase, where we were colonies of England, people were living well. I mean, things were really going well in America. There was land to be had. The average person in the United States was healthier. We were not paying taxes to England, so people could make more money when they lived here. America was actually a very nice place to live. However, as the colonists start to still consider themselves part of England, if you lived in England, you would view the colonists as kind of like, oh, they're not really English. That's not, they're not really like us. They're in America. They're totally different. And the Americans are like, yeah, I'm proud to be an English subject. I'm English, blah, blah, blah. And so there was really a disconnect because the American colonies were so far away, and the way that they each viewed one another is going to come to a head as we get through our topic today. So, Colonial America. What is our topic today? Today's topic is something called the French and Indian War. Now, we know that, the Native Americans were natives, not Indians. We don't like to use that term. However, this is the title of the war itself. Now, let me explain the sides and what's happening here. The French and the Indian War, they're not fighting each other. The French and Native Americans are on the same team. If you remember, we talked about the fur trading that the French were doing and how they really worked together in many cases with the Native Americans. Most of the Native Americans living here in America sided with the French. They liked the French more than they liked the English, and especially because the English colonies were all along the East Coast, and they were starting to push further west, and they were coming into conflict with many of the Native Americans. And so, the French and the natives, the French and Indian, are going to be on the same side in this war. Now, why does this war happen? So, let me also make sure you see this. French and the natives versus England. England and the colonies and colonists. Even though the colonists considered themselves English, England and its colonists here in America are going to be fighting the French and the Native Americans in this war. And again, I started to tell you why it begins. England's population was going up, and a lot of people were coming to America, meaning American population was starting to increase. And as it increases, remember during this time, the English colonists here in America wanted land. Land is how you showed that you were prosperous and had money. And so as the English colonists in America start to move west, they start running into Native Americans. They start running into French trading posts that were out on what they would call the frontier. And really it becomes a conflict over land. as the English colonists are moving further west, they're running into the Native Americans and the French in their outposts, and there's conflict between the two. Who owns this land? Who's going to control it? That is the gist of why this war happens. The war itself is not super important for our story, except in one way. And that way is something that you might not know about war is that war costs money. It costs a lot of money. It's going to cost so much money that England, in defending the colonists, is going to go into a depression for your notes. Also, let me tell you what a depression is, because this might be one of the quiz questions. We define this as an economic downturn. And let me make sure I spell this so you can see all of the letters. Downturn. Tried to slide in an N there, but I didn't want to have it not be readable. So an economic downturn is a depression, meaning that England is going to spend a lot of money on this war defending the colonists, and it's going to cost them a lot of money, and it's going to put England in a position where they don't have a lot of money now, and they go into a depression, meaning that the people there, the economy is not going to be very good. And so that is the important thing. We can talk about the war itself, but really the only thing you need to know is that the English and the colonists are going to win this war. They are going to defeat the Native Americans and the French, which is really kind of bad news for the Native Americans, because the side that they really chose to support in the French ends up losing, and they're kind of left out there on the frontier, and they're going to be running into more conflict with these colonists, but we'll get to that when we get to it. But here's the important thing for us. In this French and Indian War, the Native Americans and the French lose. England is successful. England wins. It has defended her colonies here in America. And the colonists are like, hooray, we have won. This is great. And England's like, yo, that cost a lot of money. So, how is England going to get this money back? There's a big arrow. England is going to tax the colonists and the colonies. England is going to say, listen, we need to get back some of this money from the war that we spent defending you. We helped you out. And now, in order to get that money back, we are going to tax you. Meaning that on certain goods, you would spend more money. We actually have taxes today. It's not really a huge deal. We just pay our taxes. When you buy things, we have sales taxes. There's tax everywhere. That tax provides the government money. And so let's say provides we'll do government, you read it, government money. And this is how governments are going to support themselves. People pay taxes, the government gets it, and then they spend it on different things. However, this is a problem. The problem is what I said before. The colonists had not been taxed before. They were not paying English taxes. They were now getting this for the first time. And again, what I was saying before, the way England viewed the colonists was not as equals. They viewed them as backwoods people living in a different continent. You're not really English, so don't pretend to be. And so the colonists are left in a place where they say, wait a second, we're going to pay taxes to the government. Does that mean that we're English? Does that mean that we're a part of England? Are we now able to take part in the English government, which is going to be Parliament? We'll talk about that next class. That is going to be essentially the question that we're going to have here. The colonists just don't know, hey, am I now part of the government? Can I have representation to tell them, what we need over here? Or not? And England's going to say, nope, absolutely not. You are still English subjects. You do what we tell you to do. You don't get to take place or any part in our government. So in the end, this is going to be a sticking point for the colonists and England. England feeling like, hey, we spent a lot of money to defend you. And the colonists saying like, hey, we'll pay taxes if you let us be in part of your government. So that's going to be the conflict that we're going to see next class. But for today, what I want you to do, because we didn't really, there's not much that's super important about the French and Indian War. However, I do want you to take a look at it and give me 5 facts. What can you find? 5 facts about French and Indian War. So this will give you an opportunity to take a look, see what you can find, do a little research, see what it was all about. But again, the more important thing for us is that England's going to win, they're going to go into depression, and they're going to need money back from the colonists. That's going to push us towards the creation of the United States of America, which we'll get to. So everyone do this today. Again, just a reminder, we need assignments done on the day of the video so that I can put you in for participation and attendance. And I'm seeing some great work. I'm really proud of everybody, and I look forward to seeing you next class.